I have to investigate everybody. And we'll get into detail on that later on.
As you know, in addition to fighting Jerry Brown's trying to raise your taxes, and we'll have more on that at 5 o'clock, we're also fighting this high-speed rail fiasco. Brown doggle, right? That's what we're calling it.
It's a brown doggle, yeah.
Thanks to a guy who wrote a letter to the LA Times, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
It a brown doggle.
It was his term, and we're officially adopting it here on the John and Ken Show.
We have not run into anything before in our long history of doing a program like this where more taxpayer dollars would be so certainly wasted. What was that example you made, John, about building something in the desert? What was it?
Oh, like skyscrapers in the desert.
Yeah.
Because the only...
Where nobody lives and nobody's coming.
That's right. The only defense they seem to have left is, well, it'll create jobs. Well, you can always create jobs. They did it in the 1930s. They had, riffraff,
you'd be better off
jobs. Just dig ditches in the desert.
I was going to say, tell people to split rocks.
That's right.
Just pay people to pound rocks into bits.
Like old-fashioned prison yard work.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it'd be just as useful. Actually, this is worse because you'd be building something that's just going to sit there and it's not going to be used and it's going to be an embarrassment for decades and decades.
How about turning California into a state where the private sector creates the jobs instead of having the government want to build a high-speed rail that's going to be extremely costly, that nobody wants, that nobody's going to use, and the only defense is, well, we're creating jobs. That's absurd. You don't want jobs like that. What you want, jobs made by the private sector that are going to last for a long time because you have a real operating business that's profitable and is useful to the public.
Yeah, I mean, if they were going to expand the freeways and even some of the airports, I can understand because people do fly and people are certainly going to be driving for a long time. But not a lot of people are going to be hopping on high-speed rail all over the place on this lie that is continually perpetuated about how it's going to help cut back traffic congestion. It's nonsense. Anyway, there was a press event today involving not Jerry Brown, but Tony Villar and the Transportation Secretary out of Washington, Ray LaHood. So let's get Steve Gregory, who covered it for us, to see what went down.
Hey, guys, got lots of audio for you.
Good.
I got to tell you that they're pretty optimistic. You're looking at millions and millions of riders.
So they say.
But you know what? There's a difference between optimism and faking a persona or faking a certain ambiance. What they're doing is they're faking it. They know the truth. Well, they're all under pressure from the unions to create these jobs for the unions in return for campaign contributions. Nobody really, if you put truth serum in their veins, would ever tell you that the public is really going to embrace this high-speed rail by the millions and millions.
So how many jobs? Well, here's what the mayor said.
High-speed rail in California means jobs
there it is.
And plenty of them. In fact, over the life of the project, we're talking about 400,000 direct jobs. 30,000 construction jobs. And when we look at the indirect jobs, we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 800,000 jobs.
The indirect jobs.
And
remember when they originally put out this nonsense, they were counting job years. Remember that?
That's right. It was
another lie.
It was going to be 1 million jobs, and then it turned out to be 1 million job years.
Years, right.
He's still going with his million, though. He's got 400,000 direct jobs and 800,000 indirect jobs. So they're still sticking with 1.2 million jobs.
And by indirect jobs, he means what? A restaurant that gives food to the workers or sells food to the workers?
Steve, what's the proof of that?
Well, then we get into that a little bit later because I asked for numbers on that. And Dan Richards, with the authority, you'll hear the exchange between him and me. We ask him a series of questions about that and about where he gets his stats and figures from. And,
all right, what's next then?
Well, this is Ray LaHood now, Secretary of Transportation. He didn't speak very long, but he did. I kind of encapsulated it here for you.
I'm really here in California to say to Californians, high-speed rail is coming to California. We will not be dissuaded by the naysayers or those who think that this is not the next generation of transportation.
Wait, stop that. Wait, they commit the fraud by coercing people into voting for the $9 billion in borrowing by claiming it's only going to cost $43 billion. They commit the fraud, and now people who call them on the fraud are naysayers. You like the way they do that little sleight of hand there? We're naysayers because we caught them lying to the public and defrauding the public. Continue, Steve.
Of transportation. High-speed rail is the next generation of transportation for the next generation. This is what we will leave to the next generation of Californians and to the country. We have made the largest investment in California than any other state in the country, $3.5 billion for high-speed rail.
Hold on. Now, no, finish it, Steve, unless you are done.
Oh, no. There's a little bit more.
Now, we've made a lot of other investments thanks to the leadership of the mayor, but we've made $3.5 billion. We believe the high-speed rail corridor in California will be the role model for high-speed rail in the country. It will be high speed. You'll have trains going 200 miles plus per hour.
He's a
President
dumb
Obama
clock.
has a
The high-speed rail is going to be high speed, huh? What a
that
dumb
vision will
sack.
not be blurred by any report or any dissenters.
Oh, yes, it is.
It will be
not blurred.
A 2020 vision for implementing high-speed rail in California and around the country.
Oh, he's a bonehead.
All right, let's review what he just said, because I think we know more about this than he does. The $3.5 billion Obama got through when the Democrats controlled Congress. Those days are over right now. In fact, the Republicans just blocked any future funding to California for high-speed rail projects in the House of Representatives. Now, in the Senate, that may not fly, but there's going to be a stalemate. We're not getting any more money. And I tell you what, if Obama is not reelected and he doesn't get the Democrats reelected with him, that's it. That $3.5 billion is it.
And by the way,
touting it is nonsense. It's history.
And he's talking $3.5 billion as if it's a lot of money, and it is. Except for this project, and it's extremely insignificant, because this project total is $180 billion once you count the Sacramento and San Diego legs, which was part of the original promise. $180 billion, and then they never counted the operating and maintenance costs, which is another $97 billion, just discovered the other day. So now we're talking about $277 billion to build, operate, and maintain the system. $3.5 billion is slightly more than 1% of the money needed.
In fact, it's barely half of what they need just to build the first segment, the famous Bakersfield to Chowchilla line. They're going to take the $3.5 billion and supposedly $2.5 billion from the bond money. Remember, the bond's only $9 billion.
Yeah, right.
It's not there. We're really short of what would be needed for the total cost, as John just laid out.
More than 90% of the money that they need to build this whole thing
is not there.
Does not exist and will not exist.
All right, Steve, we'll have more from you when we come back.
You got it.
You sound like you're standing next to a train.
Yeah, I'm still at the train station.
Oh, you are at Union Station. All right. All right, that is Steve Gregory at Union Station, where there was a press event with the illustrious Tony Villar. And you can see that firebrand, U.S. Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood.
He's working with high candle power, huh? Wow.
Nobody wanted that cabinet job.
What a dumb sack of crap that guy is. He was just like reading something off a press release. He doesn't know what's going on.
He flies out here to read from the cards. High-speed rail will be high speed.
Whoa, yeah! Good one, Ray.
Sir, go back to Washington. All right, we'll have more from Steve. We'll ask him some questions coming up.
Brainstem. John and Ken, KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk radio. The John and Ken Show continues. John Cobell and Ken Champeau. The incessant campaign to promote this fraudulent high-speed rail fiasco continues with one of Obama's stooges, the Transportation Secretary, Ray LaHood.
And, of course, we now call it the brown doggle.
Yeah, the big brown doggle, showing up with the emptiest of empty suits, Tony Villar, holding a press conference today to do cheerleading for high-speed rail. Steve Gregory.
Yes, he covered it for us. This was at Union Station downtown. So Steve has more to play from talking to these guys.
Yeah, now we're in the Q&A section. I was able to fire the first question, and I've got the questions in there. This is a rather long cut, so you guys just guide me through it where you want to go. I asked two separate sets of questions, and then here you go.
The State Legislative Analyst Office doesn't seem to share your optimism. Talks about in great length ridership won't get started until 2033. There's financing issues. There's been shakeups at the authorities, inner sanctum. How do you answer to that?
I'll let Dan start off, and then the rest of us could join in.
There have been a lot of questions about the high-speed rail program. We don't deny that. But I think we're addressing the critical ones. One of the things that I think is sometimes problematic is people say, well, gee, we look at the current political environment, we look at the current funding environment, and they just assume that that's going to continue forever. People have been promoting high-speed rail in California for a number of years. No one could have anticipated that we'd have a new president who would come in and as part of the Recovery
By
Act.
the way, stop a second.
Have,
this is Dan Richard.
Yeah,
and he is now the new chairman of the High Speed Rail Commission.
This is Jerry Brown's man.
Yeah, this is
his stooge.
Yeah, Brown's stooge here. So you listen to this double talk.
Oh yeah, so far it's just a lot of
you never know.
Very broad stuff.
You never know. Who would have known?
Everything. In other words, he's saying there are problems, but things could change. Screw you. It's not going to change. It's gotten worse.
What's funny is Ray the Hood said a few minutes ago, we're not going to be swayed by the naysayers, and here Dan Richard is admitting that the naysayers have some good points.
That we may need to rethink this, or things could change. Who knew that Obama would get elected and really be big on high-speed rail?
What does that got to do with anything? Continue, Steve.
We're going to have $8 billion to kick off the high-speed rail program. So many of these critiques, I think, to quote your great newspaper here in Los Angeles, tend to take the short view, and we take the long view. All of our analysis shows that the ridership will be very strong. Every high-speed rail system in the world.
Now listen, I asked him about
have no credibility.
That has been debunked by every outside agency that studied this.
300 million euros to the government of France to pay off some of the initial capital investment. We believe that there will be robust ridership,
want to hear about other countries' high-speed
and that
rails.
this system will pay for itself. There'll be no subsidies going forward. And these are things that we're going to continue to demonstrate and show.
Follow up on that real quick. People said the same thing about HOV lanes, about the light rail system here. Those aren't nearly at the capacity everyone projected that would be. How can you guarantee you're going to have the ridership on the high-speed rail?
All of our analyses on ridership have used very, very conservative assumptions about population growth.
No, they didn't.
About gasoline costs, about the cost of airline tickets, and so forth. And in addition to that, we've looked at a break-even analysis. And we believe even under the most pessimistic conditions, we generate more money than it takes to operate the system.
Whoa, wait, stop there. Hold on.
That's a whopper.
To operate the system? Well, what about the $180 billion to build the system? You're never getting that money back.
They're just going to say what they have to say.
Yeah, he's so full of crap. This Dan Richard is full of crap.
Steve, does he have a new business plan we haven't seen yet? Because the last couple way overestimated the ridership.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was headed with it. And I don't know if the questions came out on your end, where I said, people have said the same thing about HOV lanes. They've said the same thing about light rail here. And I said, so how can you guarantee your ridership's going to be where it needs to be? And that was
the answer there.
Yeah, and that was his answer to that.
All right, roll some more.
Okay, and then I've got the mayor's reaction, which is much shorter than this.
Under the most pessimistic conditions, we generate more money than it takes to operate the system. High-speed rail has different economics than other transit systems. High-speed rail systems around the world are competing for inner-city airline traffic and other ridership. None of us wants to launch a system that's not going to have riders. And those of us on the authority, the governor has personally talked to people who are experts on ridership models. We have a very high degree of confidence that this system, once built, will attract the riders and pay for itself.
No, it won't. Every outside agency says the opposite. In fact, all the people who put together the old business plan have all either been fired or they quit. They're gone because their business plan and their assumptions were completely discredited by every impartial analysis.
Well, what about the peer review group? The High Speed Rail's own internal peer review group said, better put this off for a while.
There's nobody who agrees with what Dan Richard and Ray the Hood and Tony Villar are selling. These guys are flim-flam con artists.
Oh, you said you had something from Tony Villar?
Yeah, just a real quick one.
Yeah, sure.
He jumped in right after Dan finished to give his 2 cents.
I remember ridership questions regarding the Orange Line. We originally estimated about 7,000 to 8,000 people would use it. Now 24,000 people are using the Orange Line. Nobody in their wildest imagination
That's
thought
the bus line across the San Fernando Valley.
And yet they do.
You know what? So turn that stupid ass off.
That is the bus express.
Here's the difference.
That is ridiculous. Plus, those numbers are so small. You're trying to compare that to the high-speed rail fiasco.
And what the Orange Line is an east-west bus route.
Yeah.
It more or less parallels the 101, and it takes people internally within the metropolitan area who want to go to work and back. The high-speed rail doesn't do that. Where are you going to find the people going from here to San Francisco and back? There's very few people who take that route as a percentage of the population. Whereas in the San Fernando Valley, there's a much higher percentage of people who need to go east and west to go to work and don't want to get stuck on the 101 or any of the other east-west boulevards. So it is an absurd comparison.
Well, what you missed in there, too, because when he was talking about that, and he was talking about all of the freeways and stuff, and I said, you haven't driven the 101 lately, apparently. And he said, oh, yes, I have. And so we got into that. But finally, and I know we're running
by the way, it has
a good point.
The
if you
orange
go east
line,
west on the 101, 134, you're just jammed up. That orange line isn't helping.
Orange line has done nothing to relieve 101 traffic. Nothing. They needed more lanes on the 101 like they were going to build 10 years ago, and that plan got scuttled. And that's the only way you alleviate traffic on the 101.
What's the last part you want to tell us?
Yeah, I leave you with this, just short one, because I muttered this and didn't realize I did it loud enough. But this is the mayor talking about television, and just I got a jab and didn't realize it.
Yeah, I always take care of my camera folks, right? I give you your shot, don't I?
Yeah, you treat radio like crap, though.
I treat you really well.
Yeah.
Good point. All right, Steve, thanks.
Bye, guys.
All right, Steve Gregory covering Tony Villar.
All right.
All right, when we come back, more on high-speed rail and Jerry Brown's plan to use the cap-and-trade money, which we've talked about. That's coming out of the Global Warming Final Solutions Act and clown hair Governor Schwarzenegger. We'll explain what that means because it may not happen.